desert of southern Peru lies one of mankind's greatest mysteries. Immense lines carved into the ground. Animals, humans, and geometric shapes cover hundreds of square kilometers. They've been called ancient racetracks, astronomical calendars, and evidence of aliens. Who made these lines, and what do they mean? Today, a new generation of scientists is seeking answers from above and on the ground, uncovering ancient pyramids and revealing new lines. And the startling discovery of a headless body could be the final key to unlocking the secrets of the Nasca lines.
Hi, so what do you have there?
I found an intact cranium and some other intact bones. It's still disturbed, but this cranium's in really good shape.
Well, it's great that this is still intact here.
American archaeologist Christina Conley is in southern Peru, excavating a prehistoric settlement. Over the past 7 years, Conley's team has unearthed important evidence of a mysterious prehistoric civilization known as the Nasca. But it was in 2004 that Conley made her most significant discovery.
So, yeah, if you could plane right over to your left, you can see the top of the tomb. It looks like the top of the burial there. Can you see that?
Inside a pristine Nasca tomb, buried in a meter of sand, another human skeleton.
Can you clean that off a little bit better so you can see that?
Well preserved, but with one remarkable exception.
Yeah, there's another vertebra. But where is the head? There's no sign of a cranium, so we believe that this is a headless person.
A headless body, buried in a seated position, according to Nasca custom.
So the mystery is, what happened to this person? You know, were they decapitated? And if so, in what context was this done? Was this taken in warfare? Was it part of a ritual sacrifice?
The discovery of this headless skeleton is extremely rare. For Conley, it's a chance to reconstruct the life and death of someone who lived in extraordinary times. A time when decapitated human heads were buried underground. Dozens in a single crypt. The heads were mummified using a specific technique. Bioarchaeologist Elsa Tomasto is an expert in ancient human remains.
They took out the skin, cleaned the soft tissue, then made an opening here, sometimes this size, sometimes bigger. They took out all the brain from this area, and then they made a hole here and passed a cord of different materials in order to hang the heads.
Marks on the foreheads show that blood vessels were slashed. But for bleeding to occur, that means the victim was either recently killed or still alive? Does human sacrifice explain the body in this traditional Nasca tomb? And is there a connection between this headless body and these famous desert lines?
Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep cleaning that up. So we found a whole bowl right here. It was the burial good of that person, that individual.
The first clue to this mystery is a beautiful ceramic jar buried next to the headless body. It's ceramic jars like this that hold the secrets of this ancient culture. Carbon dating shows that the people who made them lived here between 100 BC and 700 AD. Their language did not survive, but thousands of painted funerary pots reveal clues about how these people looked, what they ate, and even how they killed. The pottery also provides evidence for archaeologists that these were the builders of the Nasca lines.
We have images on the lines that are the same as are found on the pottery, including a great example where you have a killer whale that's depicted both on the pottery and on the lines.
The killer whale, a powerful god of the ocean. The spider, linked to rainfall. And the monkey, a symbol of the lush neighboring Amazon. These iconic images, often referring to water, were first portrayed in their ceramics and later carved onto the desert plains on a vast scale. But while the most famous lines portray familiar creatures, the vast majority are immense geometric shapes. Lines that run for kilometers and crisscross and form baffling mazes. There are literally thousands of them. So many that even today, the total number is unknown. The Nasca lines are located where the desert meets the Andes Mountains in southern Peru. Generations of line builders toiled in the intense heat of the desert for over 800 years, creating one of mankind's most enduring mysteries. The question is why? For the last 2 decades, scientists have been combing ancient Nasca settlements, searching for answers. From these fragments of evidence, they've pieced together a portrait of a sophisticated, desert-dwelling people known as the Nasca. They lived in one of the driest, most inhospitable places on Earth, and transformed narrow strips of fertile land into green oases. Over centuries, the Nasca developed sophisticated irrigation systems to channel what little water they had to their crops. and they raised vast temples to venerate the gods and bury their dead. For nearly a millennium, their civilization thrived. But by 700 AD, only the lines remained. What motivated this remarkable people to build these mysterious lines? And why did they leave a headless body and hundreds of severed heads buried underground?
The human head is what gives you life. Without a head, you're not alive, and it's this very powerful symbol.
In Nasca culture, it's also a common symbol. The evidence is clear that these ingenious farmers, builders of the famous Nasca lines, also practiced human sacrifice. Understanding this gruesome ritual may be the surprising key to decoding the Nasca lines.
Just put it down here.
This high-tech robotic helicopter has been specially flown in from Switzerland. Archaeologists will use this precision machine to create the first ever three-dimensional digital map of the Nasca lines. A digital camera mounted to the undercarriage will take hundreds of high-resolution images.
The model is very detailed because we have very high-resolution images, like 5 centimeter resolution on the ground.
For this team of scientists, the 3D map is crucial to understanding the lines, or geoglyphs. The map, which combines high-altitude aerial photography, will create a complete picture that links these enigmatic lines to the desert landscape and ancient settlements.
Bringing together all these results gives us a much more detailed view of the ancient world.
In a matter of hours, the robotic helicopter completes a job that would have taken weeks from the ground.
At the end of the day, we have a 3D photograph, which you can move around, you can turn, you can zoom in, you can fly over, you can walk through, you can animate it.
Now archaeologists can study the orientation and relationships between hundreds of lines. The digital map already covers more than 1,500 geoglyphs. But in the future, it could grow even bigger, encompassing the entire canvas of the Nasca Pampa, making it possible to analyze some of the most iconic geoglyphs. Data showing longitude, latitude, length, area, elevation, and distance from other objects will allow scientists to test theories of the lines against an unprecedented body of evidence.
If anybody has a new theory and says this line points to water sources or points to some mountains on the horizon, then we can say, what about this line and the other 1,000 ones? So this is a very practical thing to test theories in archaeology.
The map also helps scientists understand the chronology and evolution of the lines. By combining carbon dating with other methods of analysis, they have learned that the geoglyphs changed over time. Early Nasca geoglyphs were often formed in the shapes of deities and animals. But several centuries later, they were building much larger, more geometric shapes. Regardless of shape, their construction was simple but effective. Using rudimentary surveying techniques, specialists marked up the geoglyphs with wooden poles and cotton string. While they plotted out the figure's shape, workers cleared stones.
As you can see here, the soil is covered by these dark stones, and below you find a very light silt. And if you remove the dark stones, you will have a line.
Villagers piled discarded stones along the sides. This border helped shield the lines from the wind, and the arid desert climate did the rest, preserving them through the centuries. These huge geoglyphs would have taken many days to construct. And out on the Pampas, there's no water or shade. Water was the ancient Nasca's most precious commodity. And by 400 AD, a cycle of droughts put their very existence in jeopardy. Every year, tourists flock to see the Nasca lines. Still, most of the town's 24,000 residents survive by farming. And just like the ancient Nasca, their success relies on one essential commodity.
So water basically is life here. I mean, you can see the contrast between those areas that have water and where it's green and those areas that don't.
These narrow strips of fertile land can be surprisingly productive. Under the right conditions, Many major crops, like potatoes and corn, thrive here. But this desert ecosystem is anything but stable. Rivers flow, and rivers dry out, with extreme consequences for farmers. Over longer time periods, the climate fluctuations are even more extreme. It's this region's unique ecosystem that attracted the attention of geomorphologist Bernhard Eitel.
Toll, wie die Kakteen da genau in der Rinne stehen, ja?
In the highlands north of Nasca, Eitel notices large yellowish patches draped over the steep mountainsides. To the untrained eye, they look like simple variations in color. For Eitel, they're a revelation.
And this is loess, L-O-E-S-S, an Aeolian deposit which was fixed by vegetation.
Loess is wind-blown silt that only forms in the presence of grass and other plants. So what's it doing here? Eitel digs a little deeper, and he unearths a small surprise.
And here sometimes, as we can find here, there are some snail shells at the basis of the loess.
Snails require humid conditions to thrive. And in today's desert highlands, it almost never rains. Together, the two lines of evidence point to a remarkable conclusion.
So it's a quite good indicator for a moist period, for a humid period here in the desert. And if we look here, you must imagine that the whole landscape was green, covered by a grassland with some shrubs.
About 10,000 years ago, the desert highlands were wetter and greener than they are today.
Everything here was covered by grasses and by shrubs, and it was a really favorite environment for early hunters and gatherers.
This lush world was a magnet for early humans. But it was also a mirage. By the time the Nasca civilization emerged around 100 BC, the grasslands had changed back to desert. As the climate turned ever drier, these ancient people had to cope with droughts that lasted decades.
Even in good years, the water is variable, and they're relying upon the rainfall in the highlands to feed their crops. And if there's a drought, there's no water coming down.
Lack of water affected everything. Their crops, their pottery, and their health.
May natagkas kang.
Yakutas tawa munashkan! Yakutas tawa munashkan! Ayah hari curiki! Ayah hari curiki!
living in an environment like this where you're sort of on the edge of survival would create more of an intense relationship to the deities, to those beings that you feel can help you to survive.
For the Nasca, this extreme climate inspired new innovations and terrifying sacrifices that may reveal the truth behind one of mankind's greatest mysteries. Drought continued to plague the Nasca. But around 400 AD, they found the secret to their survival was underground, in the form of subterranean water wells. These spiral wells are known as pukios, stone-lined trenches that divert underground water to the valley crops.
So I think I've got good satellite reception here, so we can get a good coordinate for the sample.
Christina Conley has brought bioarchaeologist Michel Bouzon to collect a sample of the water.
Water's really low here.
Yeah, but it looks really clean.
It does look clean. Oh, this is a good sample. Check that out.
Excellent.
The sample will help establish a baseline for a series of chemical tests. These tests on the headless body will show where this person lived and died.
Okay, let's see what we have here in this individual. It's fairly well preserved.
At the lab in Nasca, they examine the physical remains.
Most of the indicators on the pelvis are quite clearly male.
Okay.
The long bones look good. They don't show any signs of infection on the bone themselves. There are no fractures either, so that doesn't look like there's any healed fractures.
So there's no evidence of violence here in the
No evidence
postcranial.
of violence, of course, until we get to the vertebra. So if we look closely on this one, we can see some cut marks here.
The cut marks are a giveaway. Only a weapon, probably an obsidian stone knife, could have made them. It confirms that the man was decapitated.
This is about as clear as it gets from the skeletal remains.
But many questions remain.
What we want to know is this person from the local area or not? Possibly his head was made into a trophy head. We're trying to understand this practice.
To figure out where he came from, they'll take a small sample of bone.
So one way that we'll be able to tell where this individual came from is by using a strontium test. So we can do it on the bone, and that'll give an indication of where he lived approximately the last 10 years of his life.
A strontium test links human bones to their native environment. If the headless man came from Nasca, the desert environment was literally written in his bones. Once they know where he's from, the archaeologists will have a better idea why he was killed.
¿Qué hacemos? Nuestros animales se mueren.
One possibility
No hay agua en nuestro pueblo.
is a local battle
Manancancho y Acuta.
over water rights.
I think there definitely was some conflict over these resources. I mean, they were scarce. The pukios can be easily controlled. If you control access, you can decide where this water goes. And we know, especially in times of drought, this would have been critical to people.
Whichever Nasca village controlled the Puquios, controlled its own destiny. Was this how the decapitated body lost his head? In the desert, death is an everyday fact of life. But for the Nasca, death was not the end.
They saw it as sort of a regeneration, that they went on to somewhere else.
They prepared the dead for burial by wrapping and binding the body in a seated position.
They were buried in the earth. They became part of the earth, maybe part of the ancestors. And so they stayed alive in the community.
Elite families were brought to a special place for their burial. It's a sacred place where Nasca culture reached its greatest heights. This is Kawachi, the heart of this ancient civilization. More than 40 ceremonial buildings lie buried under mounds of wind-blown sand. At its center, Kawachi's Grand Pyramid stands over 30 meters with a labyrinth of passageways, terraces, and plazas. Pilgrims came here for ceremonies to honor the dead and celebrate the gods. They also made gruesome offerings of human heads. Over 3 decades, archaeologist Giuseppe Orefici has found dozens of heads, but no headless bodies.
Here we've found offerings of heads, boys, girls, men and women, all from the Nasca culture, who were sacrificed inside the ceremonial center.
Just a few kilometers outside the ceremonial center lies the greatest concentration of geoglyphs in the world. Orefici believes that's no accident. He thinks the lines and kawachi were dual parts of the same religious vision.
The lines and kawachi are the same. Kawachi is a closed space. The lines are an open space, but both have the same meaning. The ceremonies that were performed here were also performed on the geoglyphs.
Like Orefici, Johnny Isla has long suspected that the lines were used for religious purposes. Isla has been investigating mounds of stones found on many trapezoids.
We investigated 12 different sites where we'd found platforms on the trapezoids.
For years, people assumed they were tombs. But Isla's excavations uncover a surprise. Sacrificial offerings, like those found at Kawachi. Food and ceramic offering bowls.
We found fragments of pots that have images common in Nasca iconography. Corn, birds, even whales.
Unlike Kawachi, there's no sign of severed heads here.
As far as we know, there's no evidence of trophy head taking on the lines. But it's not out of the question that these powerful rituals may have taken place in that really special sacred space.
The offerings confirm Isla's theory that these geoglyphs were open-air temples. But the most important find from Isla's excavations comes from the ocean.
This is a spondylus shell, which we found both intact and in fragments. These shells are almost always related to rain and water.
Why carry a rare seashell across the scorching desert, only to bury it on a mountaintop?
We now know with certainty that the ancient Nasca built these geoglyphs as an offering to their gods and as part of a ritual for water and fertility.
Water and fertility. In a region prone to extreme drought, there could be no greater concerns. Archaeologists today believe the geoglyphs were constructed as stages for religious ceremonies, centered around water and life. Smashing the offerings made the sacrifice real. For the Nasca, the act was a covenant with their gods.
They went up to these pampas to make the geoglyphs and to pray to the gods for rain and fertility. And this is most probably the function of these geoglyphs.
If the geoglyphs were open-air temples used to pray for water, could there be a similar explanation for human sacrifices?
Hi, so do you have some results for me?
Christina Conley receives the results of the strontium test on the ancient headless body.
The results are in, and the man was from the local area. He was from Nasca, so this means that he was a member of the community where he was buried.
This local man was buried with honor. A beautiful ceramic jar by his side. It's the jar that may hold the final key to this mystery.
The head jar is a human face, and growing out of the top of the head is a tree. You see life springing out of this head. You see renewal. You see regeneration.
None of the evidence fits the profile of a captured soldier executed as an enemy. Rather, to Conley it suggests someone important. Someone who may even have given his life willingly. The Nasca world hinged on the support of powerful gods who could cause drought or make the rivers run swift again.
To sacrifice yourself or to spill blood might be the greatest contribution you could make to your community.
But who was chosen? And who would choose?
If we see this practice from our point of view, we will find it horrible. But we have to think that they believed in that, and they believed that this sacrifice were for the well-being of all the society.
Nyoha Munani.
Given all of the evidence, the results of the strontium test, the way this man was buried, the head jar that was found in the grave, he looks like he was a valued member of the community, and that he either chose or was chosen, or both, to be a sacrifice in order to bring fertility to his people.
But if these sacrifices were intended to win the favor of the gods, the verdict of history is clear. By 700 AD, Nasca society is in collapse. And without strong leadership, a highlands people called the Wari moves in and takes control. The Nasca culture would simply fade from history. Today, scientists believe that the Nasca lines were built as open-air temples to pray for water and survival. But this puzzle is far from complete. Every year, new geoglyphs are discovered, more than 60 in recent times.
I would say to the people who are looking for simple answers, you won't find them. We cannot say that we resolved all the mysteries here.
In the southern desert of Peru, the Nasca lines remain as alluring as ever. Their legacy and their mystery lives on.